Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our session today on accelerating zero-ticket IT with agentic AI and automation. Today, we're going to talk about what the union of Resolve and Espressive means for the market, for customers, and for the world. So thanks for joining today, and we're going to jump right in. But before we do, just a couple items for a good experience. So all participants are muted during the webinar, so you cannot come off mute and talk. However, please ask questions with the Q&A function. We will be monitoring that throughout the session, so we definitely want this to be an interactive experience. So if you have any questions as we're talking, please do enter that in the Q&A chat. We will be sending the recording after the session via email, so no worries about that. We will get you the recording. And then if you experience any technical difficulties throughout the webinar, just exit and rejoin. That fixes like 95% of the problems. So thanks for joining. And with that, we'll get started. So I have a few questions for Sean and Pat. We're joined today by Sean, who's our CEO here at Resolve, and Pat, who is the former CEO of Espressive, now the Chief Strategy Officer here at Resolve. So my first question for you both, and this is probably the reason that most people join this webinar, what do you see the combination of Espressive doing to be able to accelerate our long-term vision of zero-ticket IT?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. I had no idea you were going to ask that question. I just happen to have a slide prepared. Yeah, Pat and I have been talking for like 8 or 9 months now about these two companies, about the two technologies, and what bringing them together really means for our customers and for our prospects and for the market itself. And we were both kind of attacking the same kind of problem, which is how do we get to a place where we have a truly kind of agentless help desk? How do we get to a point where machines are taking care of these, basic, repetitive, rudimentary tasks? And with the combination of these solutions, I think we've got a much larger footprint of what we can tackle. And so with Rita, which is the LLM-enabled chat that Espressive brings to the table, we're able to address on the front end a lot of these requests that come in from employees, right? Whether they be questions about certain policies within their company, within their domain, like what's my travel policy, what's my policy on PTO, right? Just general questions about like what are the common practices within the business. Can answer those directly through knowledge articles. They can also help you self-serve around troubleshooting. So like if you have a request, like how do I get email on my phone? And for non-technical employees, they used to have to go and search knowledge articles and then read through technical documentation to figure out how to do these somewhat technical tasks. With Rita takes that information, that knowledge article, and can actually walk users through in a much more like non-technical, user-friendly manner to help them kind of self-serve and do reasonably technical tasks. And what we've seen is that can deflect and reduce the number of tickets humans have to handle by 30 to 40%. Like that's a huge amount of volume that's coming in from employees. The next stage of that is taking action against systems, right? Being able to reset passwords, being able to provision services, being able to provision access to file systems and folders, being able to troubleshoot VPN issues, right? Being able to help you manage your personal machine. And that's where the Resolve Actions platform comes in. And it basically extends the capability of Rita to be able to do all of these different actions within your environment, whether it be troubleshooting or handling an actual issue, so something's broken or not working, or being able to like provision access to something. So like actually get you the tools and capabilities that you need to do your job. And what we've seen is that this adds another 30 to 40% of that deflection that the humans in these call centers or in these help desks that they don't have to handle. And this allows them to focus more on the sticky problems, on the problems that aren't repetitive, on the things that come in that are unique and need attention and need focused effort. And so all of those repetitive tasks get offloaded to the machines. Now, the third layer that's really interesting is we also provide support to those technicians, right? So that for the things that they have to address themselves, they can also talk to Rita and they can get access to knowledge articles. They can get access to how certain problems have been solved in the past, and they can also take action. They can give commands to Rita to be able to go and perform actions on their behalf so that they don't have to go into a bunch of different systems to make configuration changes or the like. And so what we've seen in that is even the tickets that make it through, we're able to accelerate their ability to resolve those tickets, to get them through their backlog in a significantly faster fashion with less frustration. Again, like them having to deal with all these different tools, searching knowledge articles, they're just as frustrated with that. The position they're in to do that is as an end user is today.
Yeah. Great points, Sean. And I know that Pat, obviously you have an opinion and a point of view on espressive and the historical context around everything that you guys offer. Even now, I joked the other day, like we're uncovering things that barista does that we didn't even know existed. So there's a lot to unpack here as well. So what's your take, Pat?
Yeah, absolutely. And while Sean was speaking, I decided to build this slide. And so I think, as Sean explained, really where Espressive has been focused over the past 10 years is focusing on helping automate the resolution of employee-facing issues. So people coming into the service desk, they have a question, whether the question can be resolved through a knowledge article, a catalog item, doing it through an actual automation, that it's really the world that we've actually lived in. One of the big challenges that we had as an organization back at Espressive was how can we provide a platform that enables our customers and our partners to go and start build these really sophisticated workflows to do the things that Sean was just talking about. And so when Sean was mentioning that 8 months ago we started talking to each other, this is where there was an aha moment because we were looking at Resolve going, oh wow, they've got this platform that anybody can build a workflow. And similarly, Sean was actually looking for a way to actually have some form of a front end to a lot of the automations being built to help with a lot of the discoverability issues that automations have today. Like, how do you even know that there's an automation to do a password reset? Well, you have to have a way to go and ask for it. And so it became really obvious that both products together really delivered. It was sort of a 1 + 1 = 3. Now, as Sean talked about, when people interact with Barista, they're coming in through a front door of some form, which we call a multi-turn interaction agent. And that could be an end user that's coming in through Teams or Slack. It could be through an email. It could be a service desk agent that's actually living in ServiceNow or some other ITSM tool, or perhaps even working from CX1 or Genesys or some other call center system. And so wherever they happen to be, if we're helping both the service desk agent and the employee. And what we've actually been focusing on over the past 2.5 years now is really transforming our platform to be much more of an agentic platform. And so we have that today. Think of the way that the Espressive platform, now Resolve platform, actually works is all of these agents are sort of set up to be able to handle an interaction. And we have essentially an agentic framework that looks at a combination of the interaction that's happening with the employee and a collection of content that's coming in from various different sources. So when somebody starts interacting with the virtual agent, we go take a look at what KB articles exist. Maybe we'll go into SharePoint. Maybe we'll go into Confluence. We'll go take a look at trusted websites like Microsoft.com and Google and other websites to really help with those technical issues that Sean was just talking about. We'll look at catalog items and we look at automations. And so the combination of all that content with the interaction with the employee is what this agentic framework is really designed to leverage. And then we're basically making a decision of which is the best agent that we can use, the best agentic agent that we can use to resolve that particular problem. And there are cases where we're basically handing off from one agent to another. And I'll give you an example. Maybe we start with basic answers from a knowledge article inside what we call our service desk answer agent. But then at one point, the person says, wait a minute, I want to go and submit a ticket. And it could be that there's a catalog item to submit the ticket, or maybe there isn't one. And so we're going to submit an incident. But our engine is really designed to know and to hand off to the appropriate next agent as we continue through the flow all the way to the end resolution. And this works really, really well. But the big challenge that we set upon ourselves is we didn't want to be in the business of just being the only ones that can build agents. We wanted to be able to provide an interface for our customers to extend the platform to do virtually anything by defining your own agent. So today we have an agent builder that allows you, if you wanted to go and build a PTO request agent, as an example, that connects into Workday or into SuccessFactors, you can now actually build that end to end by building the agent and then building all of the actions and the workflows using the Resolve Actions platform. So that is essentially sort of where we've actually been, Aaron. And this is why I'm excited about the merger of the two companies, because now we've now unleashed the power of the platform to virtually anybody to go and start building on top of.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting. I mean, we're using this internally to do some really cool stuff too, for marketing even. Even marketing people can use it. So yay. Um, so really, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick poll. And we'd love to understand what your biggest challenges today related to reducing ticket volume. If you do have an answer that's not shown, pop it in the Q&A chat because we'd love to hear your, honest response. Like if it doesn't fit in one of these four categories, drop it in the chat and we'd love to hear, what you guys are facing when it comes to ticket challenges. Because we know there's a lot of those out there and there's a lot of different reasons why people experience them. So yeah, we'll give everybody about a minute to respond. So I guess we'll close the poll maybe in another 40, 45 seconds. So if you haven't voted, get your vote in.
Doesn't let me vote.
I know, me neither, but it's the data. Um, so Pat, people are, I mean, Espressive, one of the things I was super impressed with was you have a very impressive list of customers and people getting a lot of value out of your platform. This agentic framework, I guess, do you have an example or a real world use case where a customer is using this effectively and they've been able to see some sort of outcome or ROI from it?
Yeah. So we have a retail customer, global retail customer, and one of the big challenges that their employees had was really in understanding um, current inventory in the store, what's available, how do they order something new, and so they had to go into some supply chain platform to go do that. And these are people in the store, right? So they're not experts in technology, and it
Right.
was really complicated for them. And so we essentially built an agent for them to essentially be the front end to that supply chain platform. And so from there, they can actually ask any question about, hey, given current inventory in the store, what should I be ordering? It'll check current inventory. It'll actually order things as needed, and has really completely changed that employee experience.
Yeah. That sounds like a really cool use case and not one that you would think of right off the bat either. So definitely unique. There's a lot you can do here. So, and I think our poll should be about closed. All right, let's see the results. Oh, I can see the results. So poor integration is actually our #1 response, followed by lack of automation, resistance to change, and limited AI capabilities. So yeah, I mean, poor integration. That's a common problem. And it's one that Resolve has been
Must need
solved
an
for a while.
automation and orchestration platform.
Yeah.
Right. Right. And actually, if I can maybe just take a minute to talk about resistance to change, because this is the world that we've been living in.
Yeah.
And, when you're looking at it from sort of the Resolve action standpoint and you're selling to people who do automation, that's fine. I mean, they know the tool. But when you're looking at automating the service desk, you're talking about people who they have day jobs, right? They're not necessarily thinking about going to a virtual agent and interacting with the virtual agent. And so one of the things that we've been focusing a lot of our time on is for those users who most of the time it's just because it's natural behavior to open a ticket the way that they've been doing for the exact same way for the past 20 years, either picking up the phone or going to a portal, is finding ways where we can actually address all tickets coming into the ITSM, not just the ones that are going through the virtual agent. And I think we're going to be talking about that in just a moment here. But this is definitely something that we understand And we know that the only path forward is not to force people to use the virtual agent. It's to basically provide options where the virtual agent is involved, even when people go around it.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. And that's actually a nice segue into our next question, which is, how do you think the combination of agentic AI with an orchestration platform like Actions is going to completely change how the IT team operates?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a slide for that as well that I was creating as you were asking me the question. If you could, if you could go,
Move fast, Pat.
be great. Yeah, I build slides really fast. And so just before I really focus on this slide, I do want to talk a little bit about autopilot, because autopilot is really sort of the core of how this operates. And so I should define a little bit more what is autopilot. So if you're familiar with Espressive and some of the way that we've actually been helping our customers, we have an agent that people can go into Slack, Teams, web, email. There's a variety of different channels that we actually support today that an employee can go to. But again, as I was saying just earlier, there's also a way where an agent that's sitting in the ITSM can interact with Barista or with Rita. And so I'm still working on the name. And so from that perspective, the goal here is to really help improve the productivity of the agent. But there was an additional problem that we saw that could be solved, where tickets are being created around us. Maybe people are going to the portal, maybe they're sending an email, etc. And these tickets get created in ServiceNow. And what we wanted to do was to essentially create a capability that allowed us to manage those tickets automatically. So when tickets show up in the ITSM, we have what we call autopilot that monitors the queue, looks at every single ticket, makes a real-time decision as to whether it can actually address the ticket and resolve it end to end. And if so, takes assignment and it just resolved the ticket. If not, then it basically puts it either back into the same queue, into a different queue, and then lets a human get involved. But the goal behind autopilot was to really eliminate a lot of that tier one function that happens today. Understanding the ticket, making sure that there's enough detail on the ticket and reaching out if necessary, categorizing the ticket, routing the ticket, all the things that like a tier one agent would typically do, we can automate end to end. And so that is really what we call autopilot. And when Sean and I, when we were looking at the value of the combined products, it became clear that a lot of the tickets that Resolve historically has focused on are tickets coming in from headless systems, right? It could be, noise coming from a Palo Alto firewall. It could be a Cisco switch. It could be a virtual server sitting somewhere. And they're all creating this noise going into these monitoring and observability tools that then, of which Resolve has, of course, an AIOps product there, but there's other products there as well. And what these tools do is they identify the signal from the noise and they open tickets inside the ITSM system. And historically, you would have a tier 2 or a tier 3 person looking at those tickets, manually figuring out what needs to happen, and then possibly go and calling Resolve to go and run the automation. But with autopilot, what we can now do is as those tickets are coming in from those tools, we can see those tickets, we can automatically take assignment of the ticket, we can look at what automations are available in Resolve Actions and automatically resolve the ticket. And when there isn't an automation available, then stick it back into the queue for a human to get involved. But with that, in all of our analytics, then also provides visibility to our customer to understand what other automations should they be focusing on building moving forward. Because fundamentally, you want to get to that point that Shauna was talking about of, almost every ticket can actually be automatically resolved. And a lot of it is just understanding where should I be spending my time to create more automations that will really drive and move the needle. And so this architecture really gets you there. This combined with our dashboards.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the key thing that Pat already mentioned too, from my perspective, is like the combination's obviously powerful. What's really interesting, like thinking back to my time as like a consultant and also an operator in large enterprises, and Pat mentioned this of getting your employees, your end users, especially if you're talking about field technicians, like in retail or in even we have a large landscaping conglomerate, and getting them to use a new technology is hard. But in this scenario, you can take advantage of our agentic solution without changing that front door, without changing how a ticket gets created. They get to keep using the exact same systems and approach, and we are leveraging our intelligence to solve them using your existing like ITSM solution. And so it's a really like low friction, low barrier to entry way for you to start taking advantage of a truly, agentic solution.
Yeah, and taking one step closer to zero ticket IT, a baby step, but a step. So
Absolutely.
It's a big baby.
that's a big baby. Babies grow into adults too. So one day you'll get
I've seen that.
yes.
Hey, Aaron, I see a question. Maybe this would be the right time to ask, which is, with the move towards agentic AI and this agent builder, how do we handle governance and security? Would this be an okay time to maybe tackle that one?
Let's jump into that.
Yeah. So there is definitely a concern with a lot of our customers that if you're providing a capability for, and really anyone to build an agent, how can you make sure that you're not creating a bigger problem for yourself? And so, from our perspective, this really comes down to having the right set of controls within the platform to dictate who can actually do what. When people generate a bot, a new agent, they can dictate whether they're the owner of the bot and they're the only ones using the bot. They can share it with some of their peers. They can share it with the company. But a lot of this has to be controlled at the higher level where IT basically gets to dictate who can do what and where. So that's how we're handling a lot of the governance and security, is really by providing the keys to IT to the right people within IT to basically dictate permissions and access control rights across the organization.
And it's really interesting, like the way this is architected to leverage existing access, right? And so like the way that we've architected this, you don't have to create like a new schema for RBAC or something like that. Like you can leverage existing controls that you already have for access to systems, and then Rita and actions tie into those existing controls. And so it's not, again, like it. I really like the thought of the metaphor of we're essentially giving you a machine that acts as if they're an L1 or an L2 or an L3, and they use the same kind of security protocols to take their action and give answers as a normal human would. And I think that allows us again to move quickly. You don't have to create new governance models for this, as you use the existing ones you already have, and you get full audit trail of what the machine's actions are, and what they have, what has actually occurred and been taken. And so if something does happen where a machine gets access to a system that you didn't want it to, or a human had access, then you'll recognize that much faster with our solution than you would if it was a human.
That's
Yeah,
right.
good point. So we covered the autopilot use case or functionality. Is there another use case that you believe somebody could see really fast ROI from with the combined solution?
Well, I can just speak to the fact that a lot of the way our customers think about the platform is not just IT, right? So today we're focusing a lot on IT and how we can help with, IT service desks and so on. But I'd say 60% of our customers today actually use us well beyond IT. We're sitting in front of, HR shared services team where we're integrated into Workday or Success Factors, and we're helping with different types of questions. Sean, you were giving an example about travel policies. Like that is definitely not an IT type question.
Yeah.
But even when that policy doesn't necessarily help you, or you have more questions, you still have to figure out like who can help me. And so our platform is just naturally, it just naturally integrated into ITSM and, service management systems, so that if those policy questions are not helpful, or if they bring up more questions that the policies don't cover, we can always connect you to a human. And the way that we connect you to a human is through that service management integration. And so that's definitely a big one. The other one that we're also seeing a lot of interest on is, and it's interesting that I'm hearing more and more people kind of thinking of our platform more as a co-pilot than sort of an IT automation, IT automation service desk tool, where employees, and because we see this all the time, employees are asking questions that really have nothing to do with corporate corporate policies or IT problems. They're asking questions about how can I improve myself as an employee? How can I be a better manager? Help me be more productive by creating content, et cetera. And the platform actually does all of that, right? It actually does act as a co-pilot, answering virtually any question under the sun. But the thing that's really unique about our approach is that we always look at corporate governance. We always look at corporate content first and foremost. We can't just make up stuff. We always have to make sure that we're looking at all the content that's available across the organization, make sure we leverage that when we're providing answers, as opposed to just making answers on the fly, which is what a lot of these virtual agents do today, right? They're just basically making stuff up.
Yeah,
And
I've experienced that personally.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
this is like an incredible, like thinking about like the opportunity that we have to have positive impact on companies and employees. Like what Pat just mentioned is an amazing opportunity for us, right? Is these large companies do have a tendency of rolling out new management schemas, new ways of tracking metrics, right? And so if they're rolling out management by objectives and they're rolling it out in a very kind of structured format, and they want everybody to run their one-on-ones in a certain manner, or they want everybody to do weekly reporting in a certain manner, those are things that you could ingest as knowledge articles into our machine, and we could answer in that context. And so like that's what's really like truly powerful about this combination is our ability to serve an enterprise starting with IT, because IT everybody touches. Every employee in the entire company touches IT. And so leveraging that as our starting point of providing value then enables us to move into these areas like Pat mentioned of, what are best practices for management? And in the case that you have to run a performance improvement plan, like what are our policies and practices around like performance management? Like the opportunity for us to answer questions in context of your company policy is nearly endless, and it gives you a lot of control over it by how we support it through knowledge articles.
Yeah, yeah. And just because you mentioned PIPs, right? And so a PIP program, when you're a manager, and I've worked in large companies as well, in the past, but reading a document on a PIP policy doesn't really help a manager very much, right? And what a manager typically needs is understanding the policy, but then partnering with HR and getting an HR to assist you through the process. This is a great use case for an agent, right? The agent can be programmed, essentially defined to understand the PIP process. You can point it at the actual policy, but you're essentially giving it the persona and saying, here are the types of things that I expect you to do to help my managers as they're going through a PIP issue or what have you. But a great opportunity to go and build an agent.
Yeah, phenomenal. I mean, and the other side of this too, like we're seeing this in deeply, deeply technical groups too. Like Resolve has a set of customers that they're in the telecommunication space, they're managing incredibly complex network infrastructure. And some of our customers, they've built run books that tell you how to address certain issues in the hundreds and thousands of these run books. And in same scenario, you've built a set of intelligence to like follow these things. Like when you see this, go and follow this run book to remediate it. We can ingest that into our engine and give people in context answers. They don't have to search anymore to find the right article out of the thousand. They can leverage our platform. And then the ones that actually take action, we can translate those into workflows. So in that case, they can potentially just make that issue never happen again, right? Never have to be touched by a human again. And so it's like from deep like network automation use cases all the way to like managing your people and personnel. The opportunity for us to drive impact for enterprises is very significant.
Yeah, I can see that. So we've touched on a broad range of use cases now. So let's flip over to the strategic side for a second. So how should IT leaders think about aligning their AI and automation adoption strategies with the KPIs that the business cares about, like cost reduction, efficiency, employee experience? What would be your tips for them?
So I have to start.
Yeah.
Pat's
Yeah. You get
It's
the
on me. All right, great. I mean,
You have an opinion.
there's a lot of traditional metrics, especially in like the ITSM space that we can help with and help track. Like I already mentioned, like mean time to resolution, I think was when a previous slide. when you think about an agent working a ticket, if we can accelerate their ability to work that ticket quickly, that provides a very clear impact on a traditional metric that you're already tracking, like first touch resolution being another one, right? And if that first touch is an agentic solution, not a human, you get compounding value from that. And I think some of these so these metrics that we're seeing kind of evolve and come out now, especially around the DEX, the like digital experience or employee experience scores. I think those are going to become more and more common, especially as like talent wars heat up. Because you're looking at the productivity of your employees, the morale, the engagement, and like the thing that I like to talk about a lot, because again, I'm running a company, like Pat's running a company, like when you think about your employees, you're paying 100 people to work for you, or 1,000 or 100,000. For every hour, 2 hours of an individual's downtime, that's lost productivity. And that's significant when they are on critical path to you growing your business. And so if they're locked out of a system, something as dumb as like their password can't be reset automatically, and they lose an hour or 2 hours of productivity in a day, that impacts your business. And so some of this is starting to create kind of different ways of viewing it. Is how do we actually capture and analyze the productivity of employees and that productivity gain that we get by solving their problems instantly, by solving these things that happen, so like VPN issues, super common, especially in today's remote world. If we can solve that instantly, as soon as the employee says, I can't get into my system, I think I have a VPN issue, and we kick off a set of automations to triage, troubleshoot, and remediate it, you just saved it. And if that's a critical employee, you just saved a day's worth of work for them.
Yeah.
And so I think there are the traditional metrics that we can impact in a very significant way, but then there's these non-traditional metrics like employee engagement, employee productivity. I mean, getting into automation coverage, right? Are 60% of the tickets being created handled agentless, or is it only 20%? And then Pat mentioned this, of like our systems actually looking at and helping you determine what's the next big bucket that you can go and address with our solution to get you to 60, to get you to 80. And I think that's going to be the evolution, is how do we get to agentless? How do we get to immediate responses? How do we get to a level of engagement between an employee and our LLM enabled chat where they're not frustrated, where they interact with us and they get the answers in the terminology they understand, where they're not treated like an idiot. Like our bot is built to translate technical things into non-technical nomenclature. And so I don't know, I just rambled a lot, but those are the things that I think about.
Yeah. And I think the VPN example that you provided, Sean, is an interesting one. The way that the opportunity that we now have with our agentic platform is not wait for the employee to report they have an issue. It's for us to take the signals from these different systems, these different platforms, proactively reach out to the employee and let them know, hey, I think you may have a VPN issue. Do you mind if I fix it before you start your day? Now you've just completely changed the way people even perceive IT support, where now it has become a proactive opportunity as opposed to waiting for people to actually report having a problem. Now, the way, because we've been doing this for 10 years now, the interesting way to, with all of these statistics that we're talking about and so on, the reality is people are sitting in their ITSM, they're generating these reports because there's stuff coming from everywhere within the ITSM. And so the way that we integrate into these platforms is think of the virtual agent, the agentic bot, as essentially being an agent. And when you're looking at all your ITSM reports and it's showing you all your different agents sitting in on physical desks, and it's basically showing that agentic agent as almost as an individual, but as an agent, and it's showing you the impact that it's actually having on your service operation overall. So you can actually see with this agentic agent, what was the MTTR impact? What was my first call resolution impact? And you can start comparing the performance of that compared to the humans that you have on your desk. The goal here is not to eliminate the humans. The goal is to allow the humans to focus on things that humans actually have to focus on. Today, unfortunately, they're just stuck working on a lot of these repetitive tickets because, as we saw in the first poll, there just isn't a lot of automation available today. And so we're relying on humans to do the same thing over and over and over again. But all of that can now be automated.
Well, and it, there's an interesting point that Pat made on one of our podcasts recently of there's this issue too in the IT space where employees will give up. They'll try to solve their problem and they can't self-serve and the tickets take too long to get solved. And so they'll just give up. They'll find a workaround for whatever it is that they were encountering. And I think that's a hidden cost, right? That is a hidden cost that you can't see currently in your environment. That's because of the current experience you have in supporting your employees.
Yep.
Silent sufferers. That one stuck.
I
Yeah.
see I see there's a question here about how can AI be used to help create, validate, testing automations and workflows in Actions Express. Sean, maybe you're better I mean, I can
I
certainly
can I can
maybe
address
you're
that.
better.
Yeah, so a part of this combination isn't just the technologies we have today and combining them into, I think, a much more cohesive and impactful whole, but we are also, cross-pollinating. So we're leveraging the intelligence engine that Espressive has built to build workflows, just like vibe coding, like these vibe coding platforms that are out there today, like Cursor. We're building the same thing for building workflows. And so today we have a beta where you can build activities, custom activities using that. And something we're hoping to roll out very soon is the ability to build entire workflows, in the same way you would with Lovable or Cursor or Windsurf or like any of these vibe coding platforms. And so, like, much far beyond just testing it, we're talking about actually building it and helping you get it into production using kind of a vibe coding interaction style.
Yeah. Yeah. I also see a question around whether a DEX is mandatory to really get maximum performance out of this architecture, and the answer is no. You don't need to have a DEX. What a DEX is useful for us is an ability to reach into the device to gather information, but it's not necessary. We actually today, for a lot of our customers, they're not running a NextThink or a Lakeside or some other DEX tool. Um, so it is not critical and it is not mandatory. It's simply for us another signal, another data source for information that we can use in making decisions.
Yeah. So before we wander off of KPIs, love the questions. Keep them coming, by the way. We do have a poll around the metrics that you plan to track in 2026. So we'll keep this up again for about a minute and then we'll discuss the answers before we get into our last question of the day. By the way, thank you for plugging the Agents of IT podcast, Sean. For everyone
Hey,
who haven't checked it out
you're
yet, it's
welcome.
live wherever you get your podcasts. So be sure to like and subscribe. See what you get when you have a marketer on a webinar.
Yeah, I still haven't gotten to say that. My kids are still very disappointed in me.
We'll let you have your moment. We'll give you.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, so on the topic of Dex, the employee experience, not the Dex tool that we were just talking about. I think one of the things that, maybe we don't talk about a lot is the fact that when employees feel happy and like their needs are met, they're more excited to come to work and they're more productive. And at the end of the day, as a company, you're only as good as the people that you've hired, and people that you've hired are people. And if you give them a good day, they're probably going to give you a good day. If you give them a bad day, they're probably going to give you a bad day. I've watched that play out personally many, many times. So
Setting me up
But
to
it
go off the rails,
starts
Aaron.
before they even become an employee, Aaron. And one of the problems that we help a lot of our customers with is onboarding of employees. And I can't tell you the number of stories that I've heard where, the whole onboarding process starts with a manager submitting a form that they forget to submit, either because they're on vacation, they're busy, they whatever. Employee shows up, nobody knows who they are, they don't have a laptop, they get to sit there for 48 hours while they're reading documentation because they don't even have a laptop. But that is another great opportunity. You can completely automate end to end, and very common for us to do, where we're getting signals from an HR system. Hey, new employees going to be starting on, 2 weeks from now. And then we can initiate that onboarding process, making sure we're ordering the laptop, creating the accounts, making sure that they have a security access, they have a badge, etc. Everything can actually be, handled end to end. And when your day one experience is phenomenal, you're likelier to have a happier employee even when things go bad. But if you start in a very negative way, you're kind of guaranteed that even if you have a good thing that happens on day 3, they just can't forget the fact that they had a horrible onboarding experience.
Can't undo that first impression for
Nope.
sure. I will say Resolve, I'm fairly new still. I've only been here for 7 or 8 months, but it was the smoothest onboarding experience I've ever had. And I suspect it's because we automated it. So I'll give credit to Resolve on that one. Okay, so with
You're
that,
welcome, Aaron.
we can close the poll. Okay, it looks like most common is productivity hour. Oh no, sorry, MTTR. Okay, yeah, no surprise. You were right on that, Pat. Pat asked me to include that. Productivity hours reclaimed is second, and then autonomous resolution rate is third. Okay, so there's some newer metrics in there. I like autonomous resolution rate being in the top 3. That's a good sign, I think.
Well, what's interesting, so we have some of our most mature automation customers that we've had for quite some time now. That this is how they build their business case is the productivity hours reclaimed. Because it's the easiest, most quantifiable thing, right? If you compare how we used to do something and how much time it took and then how much that person cost per hour, you can easily quantify the value created with automation. And those numbers, especially when you're talking about something like password reset, you think it only takes 10-15 minutes to solve that problem, but when you're doing it 10,000 times a year, like that gets expensive, right? And that's not even taking into account switching costs, right? The cost of actually moving through many different disparate tasks that they're doing. And so yeah, if you're looking to come up with an incredibly quantifiable metric to show true like cost savings, that's an easy one to go after.
Yeah, for
We even
sure.
have an ROI dashboard that actually helps you calculate it. So
Ew, good plug.
that's what I'm here for.
Um, okay, I think, did we have a couple other questions? I think I saw a couple questions come in.
Yeah, there's questions about getting content and so on, which we can handle post. There was one though, asking about marketing, since Aaron, you were talking about
Yeah.
marketing. Now, what are the marketing opportunities?
I like this, Pat. Turn it back on Aaron.
The marketing opportunities for
The question was, you said that you leverage the Rita platform to be able to support your team,
what I
and
referenced
yeah,
earlier.
and they're interested in how.
Okay, so we set up what we're calling our sales agent. So we basically took all of our product marketing and enablement materials and fed it into an agent. And that acts as one data source. We also created a second data source about all of our customer use cases and proof points. So that's our customer storyteller GPT. And then we have a third, which is around competitive intelligence specifically. So when the sales team is on a call, they'll be able to chat into the agent and say like, "Hey, I'm hearing a lot about so and so. Can you give me all of the information on this competitor?" Or they mentioned they want to reduce MTTR. Do we have any customers that I can reference? So that's one use case for this. That's pretty cool. Another thing we're doing is we created an automation to go out and scrape Reddit for relevant posts out there on subreddits for us to respond to. So that automation runs daily. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot you can do with the possibilities are endless, right?
Just getting started.
Just getting started. Okay, wow, I had a question. Wasn't expecting that. Okay, so I'll move into our final question so we can wrap up here and give a little bit of time for Q&A. And I know we have some customers from both the Resolve and Espressive side who have joined us today. So can you tell us a little bit about the benefits that they'll receive immediately from this merger?
I feel like Pat's gonna make me go first again.
Yep.
See, this is the joy of having Ari, is Ari just can't wait to talk, so he always just goes. Yeah, so immediate benefits. Like if I think from the Resolve customer base, and we're already having a lot of conversations like this, and we've talked about these use cases for even our customers that are doing these very deep technical things, L3 level operations use cases and infrastructure, there is still a tremendous opportunity to leverage Rita to help enable your workforce, to help make them more productive, make them search for less things, and even provide them one kind of chat ops interface to be able to do some of these interactions and troubleshooting. Because we already have automations for those folks that are going out and they're doing health checks, they're gathering data across a bunch of disparate systems to try to figure out where the real issue is. I mean, that's something you could kick off from Rita today, as opposed to having to go to the automation platform. And I already mentioned the use case. If you've got run books, if you got knowledge built up on how to triage or address issues, that's something we could feed into Rita today. And instead of having to search, just like Aaron mentioned for the sales team, instead of having to search, you can just ask Rita, and Rita provides you a very clean, nice answer to that.
Yeah. And there's also the assisting with the discoverability of all these automations that have been created, right? So
Absolutely,
team
yeah.
may build a password reset automation, and if nobody in the organization knows how to access it, then, well, there's no value. And so having Rita be that front end that does all that automatic discovery, knows all the automations are available, and then can execute those based on human language is huge. And then from more of a classic espressive standpoint, the immediate value is just an ability for anyone to start building agents and building these very sophisticated workflows using a very easy to use and proven platform that's Resolve Actions, and that is available basically today. So I'm super excited about that combination of the two things, how it's going to help both sets of customers.
Yeah, for sure. Lots of benefits for all. So that was our last question. So we'll open it up for Q&A. I know we've answered a couple questions already, but if you have any questions, please drop them into the Q&A chat.
Softball questions only.
All right.
Yeah.
I see one here. Do you have tips on how I can make a business case to invest in agentic automation?
All right, it's your turn, Pat.
All right, I'll go first. Well, I think so. First thing I would actually do is take a look at where, depending on where you are inside the business, but what activities are consuming a lot of time today. And so if you're in IT operations, then maybe one of the things that you're spending a lot of time on is just monitoring systems, looking for outages, et cetera. That is a great use case where you can simply build an agent and it will go and automate that whole process for you. So there isn't like a simple answer because it's very situational to your role. But the first thing that you want to go look at is what are your teams even working on, and what's just taking a lot of time doing very repetitive work that takes them away from adding value and working on things that actually do deliver shareholder value as opposed to just more of the same. So that's the first thing that I would do. And then from that perspective, take a look at how many of them happen. So ideally, if it's a problem that happens twice a year, don't bother, right? If it's something that happens 3 times a week or 3 times a day, then depending on the scope and the complexity and the amount of time it takes to resolve, that could actually be a good target. But that's really where I would start, is look at where are your teams spending time, and normally repetitive types of things. And that's the first thing that I would be focusing on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and looking at this from more of like incremental value standpoint, time to value in large enterprises is so important, right? There's always changing priorities, and if you aren't showing value from day one, your initiative will be killed. Someone is going to take your funding, someone's going to take your budget. And so if I'm thinking not just purely about business case, those things that are high volume, repetitive tasks that you're doing on a daily, weekly basis that are costing you capacity, go and address those first, right? Extra credit if you can do them incredibly fast and get them into production quickly. Like the one thing that I do see some customers doing is they try to eat the elephant from the beginning, right? They get obsessed with this big, complex use case and problem but they don't take into account like what we've known about software development since, I don't know, I was born, which is like iterative and incremental is the best way to deliver value and build software products over time. And automation and agentic, this is no different, right? Shrink the universe down to this very specific problem you want to solve that provides immediate returns. Solve that problem, and it buys you permission within your company to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. Because like it's not just about building the initial business case, it's about maintaining the attention of the executive team that you're driving impact every single day with every new thing that you build and automate. And so like as much as I would like to tell you build this amazing big beautiful business case, I would tell you like build the minimum viable business case that gives you value fast and then deliver, 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 deliver.
Yeah.
Good advice. We have some more questions. Can you describe more use cases outside of IT or requestable services, non-ticketed work, where this merger of technologies will provide benefits?
We've done a lot. I'll tell you one. I'll go first, Pat. So we've had a few calls recently that I found to be incredibly interesting. Right, these aren't like our typical customers that we've been serving. So, like I mentioned, the landscaping company, right? There's a basically a private equity that's buying up and merging a bunch of landscaping companies into kind of one conglomerate, and and it's interesting because you wouldn't think that one of their big challenges for scaling the business would be IT, but it is. Because if you think of all these agents, all of these technicians are out in the field. And the main thing that they have as a resource in their connection back to the mothership is a phone. And these are not technical people, right? They're out, their job is to make someone's lawn or house or whatever look beautiful. That's their job. That's what they do every day. They don't work in technology, but they have to interact with systems around purchasing for their materials, for their plants. They have to work in systems to track time and bill their customers, right? And so like they have to interact with these core mothership technologies. And so there's a really interesting challenge of like, how do you provide them a very non-technical, non-invasive way to get what they need out of IT and to get it quickly? And so this, introduces a really interesting opportunity where they're used to, the way they operate is texting, right? They text their little group, they text their boss, they text their manager, right? That's how they're interacting with everybody on a daily basis. So they're already messaging. They already understand that dynamic. And so we were able to create an interesting entry point into IT for them to get their solutions through Rita, through a conversational AI. And so like I do think there's going to be a lot more of, and Pat already mentioned with retail, like the specific retail use case. I think there's a ton of opportunity like that for these non-technical folks that are doing kind of field-based jobs that have a kind of a limit. They don't have a laptop, right? They have kind of a limited view into the world, and I think we can provide them a very seamless solution to connecting to. I keep calling it the mothership, but really to like technology, to IT.
Yeah. I just happen to know this person who's asking this question. And so I'll give another example. And this is just because I know the vertical that they happen to be in. They're in the pharma business and they have a big commercial team that's out there working with, doctors or, other potential customers. And, they're on a daily basis, the system of record for them is Viva, right? And so they have a lot of issues, they have questions about Viva, they have questions about the product, et cetera, that really have nothing to do with IT. And this is another great example where you could build an agent that essentially acts as that front end. This is your commercial team agent that is there to answer questions about the product, kind of similar to what Aaron was talking about earlier. But these are typically, product related questions. Hey, I have this opportunity, and they're trying to figure out whether this is the right product or not, or maybe they have questions about stuff within Viva. But another great example.
Yeah, we have a few more questions here. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all of them, but if we
Well,
don't,
the first one there is easy. So does Resolve operate environments that use hardware, OTP, and app-based authenticators? The answer is yes.
okay, that was a yes, no.
Shortest one. Yeah.
Does the agent then use only existing configured actions, or can the agent also build new actions autonomously if it can't fall back on existing ones?
So it's an interesting question because it enters like this interesting dynamic where The answer ultimately, like in the future for us, is going to be yes. But the key element to this, and we play in the enterprise, right? And in the enterprise, there is still a reluctance to allow AI to interact directly with your systems. And so one of the like differences for our solution is that we do have this a process, and it's workflow driven, that allows you to promote things to be able to be used by the agent, right? And so yes, it will create workflows, but it's going to be up to someone to approve those for the agentic solution to actually use in production. And this allows us, like, it is a little bit of bureaucracy, but it allows you to have so much more control over what the agent can impact. Because if you give it the ability to do anything it wants to your source of truth database, the agent can make a decision to like drop a table. And if you don't have any controls around that, then it could be catastrophic for you.
Yeah. But I think another good example too is just access to software. And so an agent can absolutely just assign a license to an individual, but the reality is, do you really want them to have access to it? And in many cases, there's an approval process. And so there's a business process that needs to be followed. And so, yeah, I think technically the answer is yes, but I think realistically, I think people still want to feel comfortable and make sure that whatever this bot is going to do or this agent is going to do, it's actually consistent with the enterprise processes.
Yeah, that makes sense. You definitely want a little bit of human oversight in the process, certainly.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have another question. We're currently facing the classic buy versus build decision when it comes to agentic automation. Considering our ability to develop custom automation scripts, extend ServiceNow orchestration, or leverage existing tools like PowerShells and APIs, how might we justify this as a solution versus building one in-house?
Yeah. Well, I think the question here is build, right? And before this Espressive, I used to run all the products at ServiceNow, so I'm familiar with ServiceNow. Um, and I've worked with a lot of ServiceNow customers. And one of the big challenges with Now Assist and some of that platform is every single use case that you want to implement requires some heavy lifting. It requires building. And from an agentic standpoint, the way that we've actually approached the problem is basically having a mantra that says, IT service desk is already overloaded. The last thing that they need is more work to go and create use cases to help reduce their workload because they just don't have the time. And so the platform has to be able to automate the creation of all those different workflows automatically. And so our platform doesn't require building anything other than, of course, these workflows within Resolve actions. But connecting the dots and all of that is fully automated. So there's no intents, there's no entities, there's no building of anything. The agent simply knows what to do on its own.
Yeah, the other thing that I would highlight is the vast majority of things that are going to provide you the immediate returns are things that we can do out of the box, are things that like we've been doing this for a very long time, and so we have loads of workflows and content that are all pre-built that can apply to these common use cases. And going back to what I was saying, like getting to immediate value, right? Combine what Pat just explained around like being able to immediately get value out of Rita, and then the combination of all the out of the box stuff that allows you to implement immediately these workflows. You accelerate dramatically. You also get less tied to homegrown things that someone has to maintain at some point. It's an enterprise platform, right? That actually puts things into a very standardized way, so you don't have this like script sprawl that we've seen in a lot of places where if the person leaves that wrote that script, all of a sudden, hoot, nobody knows what the heck it does or how it does it. So anyway, I think there's a lot of different ways that you could describe the value, and some of it really just comes down to we're a vendor that spends all day every day doing exactly this, and you would be competing with a vendor that sees across all of these different enterprises, and that gives us an ability to offer you what we're learning from them and build much faster.
Awesome. All right, well, that was our last question. So we did get through them all. We are at the top of the hour, so we're going to wrap here. But thank you, everybody, for joining, and we hope you enjoyed the session. We will be sending the recording to you all via email, so look out for that later today or tomorrow. So thank you. Take care, everybody.
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.